Mike Molenda, editor-in-chief of Guitar Player magazine, and I'm on Musicians on the Record.
This is huge, musicians on the record. Bring it on.
Hi, welcome to Musicians on the Record. I'm David Ward. This is the show where we're getting the musician's story, and this is going to be another fun one today. We're talking all about guitar with guitarist and editor-in-chief of Guitar Player magazine, Mike Molenda is on the show. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, David. Hello, everybody out there. It's kind of weird to be in front of the camera for a change.
Right. Well, this is what's so exciting because kind of like me, Mike, and you've been doing this way longer, you tell other people's stories about the guitar and everything about guitar. So I'm really excited. We're going to get to hear more of your story today. But can we also start with how the heck did Guitar Player magazine and online get to be 50 years old? How did that happen?
Well, I guess Bud Eastman, our late founder, he must have done it right back in 1967 when he figured this thing out. I mean, I'm proud for him and the editors who were working with him back then and into the 70s and 80s, of course, and through all the 50 years, actually, that, Bud invented this gear magazine thing. I mean, Guitar World and Premier Guitar and any guitar magazine in France or Poland or Russia, owes a debt of gratitude to Bud for actually founding the whole this category of guitar gear magazines.
Yes.
And it's just a credit to the staff for the last 50 years that they have really lived and loved and been obsessed by all this stuff and have been able to bring great interviews and great gear reviews and great guitar lessons to the community. It's really it's kind of humbling to sit here and look at this 50-year-old magazine and go, how is it still alive? It's crazy.
Yeah. And how cool is that you get to be the steward of that today as the editor-in-chief and guide where it's going into the future?
Yeah, it's kind of it makes me paranoid all the time that I'm doing the right thing. Yeah. And I've been here 20 years now, but
fantastic.
Obviously Don Menn, who was editor, and Tom Wheeler, of course, who's probably the most famous Guitar Player editor. Everybody, Joe Gore, Dominic Milano, Richard Johnston, anybody who's had the seat has done an awesome job at keeping things together. Because they were hippies, of course, it was kind of an interesting. It was a phalanx of guitars, acoustic selectors with little hats on top.
Oh, great! I love it. That's fantastic.
And a matter of fact, in the 4 issues that they put out in 1967, there was not an actual guitar player or a famous guitar player on the cover.
Right. Sure. They were just starting out and cutting their teeth with all of that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your story and obviously how all of that happened of you getting to this place. When did you first fall in love with guitar? When did music start for you?
Well, like many people of my generation, it goes back to the Beatles, sitting in front of the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964 and getting my mind blown by that, having my dad calling them girls and just making snotty aside stuff the whole performance. I think he was kind of pissed off that Dean Martin wasn't on or something. Right. So I kind of realized, okay, if my dad's not digging this has got to be what I need to do. And plus, I was just transfixed. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that. And then later on, what really kicked it in for me, I saw, I think, The Who on the Today Show. It filmed in London.
Wow.
And I'd always had weird self-image issues and all that. And there's Peter Townsend, who's kind of tall and gawky and a nose bigger than mine. I didn't think he could get a nose bigger than mine. And I went, well, if he's got all these girls screaming at him, then this is what I need. This is what I need to do.
There we go.
And of course, like most musicians, if they did start out for that lust for the opposite sex, it did transform itself into a love for the guitar, the instrument, the music, and I'm forever thankful that whatever was in my DNA just kind of, well, I don't think it was in my DNA because I come from Italian working class, so I think everything in my DNA was fighting me to say, you cannot be a musician. But whatever little hiccup happened that allowed me to embrace this instrument, I'm forever thankful. It's just, it's made my life an awesome life.
Yeah. And so the Beatles and the Who were some of those early influences. I love those bands as well. They're incredible. What drove you towards the guitar and to pick that up? Do you remember your first guitar as well?
It was a horrible acoustic. I went to my mom and said I want to do this. We got a horrible, I think my grandmother probably brought me a horrible acoustic from Sears or something like that. It was always good, better, best, and I think I got the not so good. But, my mom immediately signed me up for lessons with like a 97-year-old Swedish woman who was not even close to what I wanted to learn. So I gave it up for a while. And then I think I kind of came back to it a little late, like probably high school, because then, buddies were forming bands and things like that. It became like a social thing.
Yeah. And all self-taught, Mike, or were there some important teachers, maybe not the lovely 97-year-old woman, but were there some important teachers that came along?
There was a jazz teacher. There was a guitar shop in my neighborhood on 7th Avenue in Irving, San Francisco. It was called Gene's Guitar Shop. And that's kind of where I would hang out there all the time trying to absorb it. One of these guys kind of noticed me all the time, said, "What are you doing?" "Well, I kind of want to play guitar." He says, "Well, do you know how to play guitar?" "Well, yeah, I looked at some books." And he said, "Well, you need to hire me to teach you so you know what you're doing." And I was into all the British bands, and he was a jazz teacher, and he also was into like the Allman Brothers and bands I wasn't really that into, but it did expand my knowledge of the guitar. He also taught me blues, but what he didn't teach me, and this is something that weirded me out for a long time, was he didn't teach me the pentatonic scale. Okay. He taught me a lot of modes, Aeolian, all that stuff, Phrygian, etc. And that's kind of how I learned how to derive solos from those modes rather than the pentatonic scale. So whenever I would jam with people, I'd always be a little bit weirder. And I don't know if it's good weird or bad weird, but it was interesting, and it kind of took me a while to figure out how to make that work. And the savior for me was when I heard Frampton Comes Alive in a record store, and all of a sudden I'm going, oh man, those solos kind of sound like the note choices that I'm making. Although anyway, I'm not anywhere near even infinitesimally as good as Peter Frampton, but I kind of heard a brother in arms, so to speak. It's like I don't feel so weird anymore. And I realized later on after talking to him that, of course, he approached the guitar. Of course, he obviously knows the pentatonic, but he uses a lot of modes in his playing. And it was like, finally, I don't feel like a piece of crap.
Right. Yeah. Somebody speaking your language, right? That's very great. Yeah. So the pentatonic and I like to try to bring this around to someone who's picking up their first guitar or just learning the guitar as well. That's an important aspect to learn, the pentatonic scale.
Yeah, I think if you're going to jam it, it's the language of rock guitar for sure, or the foundational language of rock guitar. From there, if you want to get more interesting and try to forge your own style, which of course all guitarists struggle and strive to do, studying arpeggios and modes, and even listening to saxophone players and Mack trucks and all that. Anything you can derive a sound from would be good. But starting out with that 5-note scale is always a good place to start.
Got it. Yeah, nice. So you started taking lessons. Your passion for guitar and music is growing. In your mind, Mike, what's the dream that's brewing of what you want to do with music?
Well, obviously, I think I'm going to be a rock star, of course.
Sure. Who doesn't?
Right? Hey,
right.
I'm on the way. This is the beginning.
Right.
I didn't realize then how, wonderful and brutal and brutally wonderful it is to be in the music business. That was, I just thought, I read voraciously, of course, and I just thought, well, I'm going to be playing in a club somewhere, and someone's going to discover me, and I'm going to have a record deal, and boom, that's how it works. Right. Funny thing was, everybody I talked to who was also a musician thought that was going to happen to them as well.
Right. Well, and the amazing thing is that it may be more rare, but sometimes it actually does happen, right? But
that's exactly right. That's always the thing that when you try to, if I'm giving seminars today about, prepping yourself for being a self-contained, self-sustaining musician in the 21st century, there are enough, weird fantasy tales where a young person can go, well, I know someone's just going to pick me up off the street and say I'm a star. Because that does happen. You're right. It still happens today. Yeah. But it doesn't happen to most of us. So sometimes you've got to put the hard work in.
That's right.
Well, in case,
exactly. Well, and that's always the case, too, that it's hard work even with some luck. Can I ask for you, Mike, what have been some of the obstacles and challenges? Because it may not have been the original dream, but you're making a living with music in the music business, right? So what are some of those obstacles and challenges you've had to overcome?
Well, you never know where your talent really is. And I think that, especially today with the web and YouTube and everything, if you produce something that's original, people will be drawn to it and you'll have an audience. I think back in the 70s, it was more controlled by the record companies. But, I'm not going to say that I was this undiscovered rock star that had awesome songs and awesome voice and awesome guitar licks, and they just didn't dig me, because there's obviously a lot of reasons why somebody is successful or is not successful in the entertainment business. But my challenge was just I had acne and acne scars, and they would just say outright, well, would you consider getting a dermabrasion? They weren't offering me if you get a dermabrasion, we'll give you a record contract. But I constantly heard that my looks were not up to snuff for whatever they wanted to do. So it took me a while, and I had a manager later on who got a couple of my songs, or the band I was in, into a flexi disc that was released in Germany. And from there, it was the Germans really that kind of drove my career at that point. They wanted to hear more things. They wanted to see me perform. They didn't care that I had acne scars. They just liked the fact that I jumped up and down a lot. So.
Right, exactly. Again, going back to the Pete Townshend thing, or, my God, if physical looks were a requirement for rock and roll, 3/4 of folks wouldn't be in it. Ramones, whoever, right? My God. So,
you got to be interesting, but I was kind of coming up in the pretty boy era, So there was that, and like I said, I was probably awful. They were just trying to be not. They tried to let me down in a not easy, not nice manner by just saying I look like crap.
Okay.
But the point though is today sometimes it's difficult for an older person to look sometimes at the bands that are really making it, because the people before me in my era, we were deluged by. Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis, Chuck Berry, and these people that were just devastatingly charismatic performers. So when you decided that, okay, I'm all in now, I want to try to be that kind of person, I want to be an entertainer, that stuff was just ziplocked into your brain. It's like you didn't get out there and look at your shoes. You didn't get out there and look down, at your set list or not move around. It's like you were shown by explicitly what a awesome entertainer did to seduce an audience. Sure. Right. So that's what we were all up against. Like, well, how can I be, what can I do to be John Lennon, or what can I do to be Jimmy Page? You had to, you kind of knew. Yeah.
Well, right, and those guys, it's the top of the cream of the crop of musicianship, right, and what we were all emulating to get to.
Yeah. Well, and even seeing James Brown, you just went, oh boy,
right.
It's a tsunami of charisma.
Absolutely,
like,
right, amazing.
How do I get there, in a rock context, or what can I borrow, what can I synthesize, what can I throw together in a little stew and come up with something that's my own. I mean, we my peers and I talked about this a lot. How do we come up with an identity that's a public identity.
You bet. A brand, right? A brand and a sound. Tell us
We didn't call it that back then, but that's exactly right.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Different word back then, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because obviously, you went for your dream. Sometimes we're on the second, third, or fourth iteration of the dream, but you went for it. Where did that take you? Obviously, you made an album or maybe more, went on tour, also with a band as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to be around San Francisco during the punk explosion, which was also another, little grenade in my brain. Wow, this is exciting music. It's not necessarily virtuosic music, but it's a lot of fun.
Yes. We
had the Mabuhay Gardens, a famous punk club on Broadway in San Francisco. There was a community developing around it. And that's something that I love too, because just sidebar, when I became in love with the theater or with ballet or with films and things like that, I would always go back to the 30s, like in Paris, where they have the salons. You have Jean Cocteau and Pablo Picasso and all these people just kind of hybrid. They're the hybrids of art where they would work on ballets together or work on films together. And that sense of community, that artistic community really, really appealed to me.
Yes.
I wasn't kind of getting that so much from the early 70s rockers, but once the punk thing hit, even though it definitely had some societal problems, but it was like an us against them situation, which I was attracted to. It wasn't just razor blades and safety pins. There was punk art, punk literature, punk film, punk theater, and it was basically we just want to do what we want to do. I mean, people always think the punks are the Sex Pistols or whatever. Well, but there were reggae bands that were punk, and there were prog bands that were punk. Right. It was just a matter of accepting a view of the world that was more, internal. Does that make sense? We're going to, forget the business. We're going to do what we like. And I was so attracted to that community. So that kind of started off, my kind of resonating around that community. Then I decided to kind of get off my butt and do something bigger. That sounds arrogant, but I just wanted to challenge myself. So I did basically was one of San Francisco's first rock theater, multimedia theater pieces called Street Beat, which Bill Graham and Queenie Taylor kind of took under their wing at Wolfgang's, which was a Bill Graham's club here in San Francisco. They basically let us headline. It was sold out. It was crazy. It involved dancers, film projections, found sound, a band on stage actually playing the music, acting things out. And that was kind of the big thing for me. I had a lot of people coming after me then, and what that culminated into signing some of the worst contracts anyone could ever sign. So.
Can we talk about that too, Mike? Because I think that's such an important lesson, it's unfortunate you and many others had to go through that. But, one of our recent interviews with Paul Quinn, who's an entertainment lawyer and talks all about, he went through it himself, of signing a really bad contract, so that, there are lessons learned with all of that and might save somebody else in the future from doing that. If we could turn the clock back, what would you have done differently with that?
Well, it's hard for me to remember back then, and definitely my ego, like most performers, was involved somewhat.
Sure.
But I wasn't a performer who just wanted to be a rock star at that point, because I knew that once you'll do anything to be a rock star, the business people can just tear you apart. I really did want to try to watch out for myself, but unfortunately, everything happens so fast and so big, and you're taking meetings, and we're offering you this, we're offering you that, have a lawyer check this, and I mean, I did have a lawyer check one of the contracts, and she did say this isn't good, and I kind of went, well, maybe I should just roll the dice, because they're offering a lot, sadly, which they didn't come through with. So I was just stupid, and I think that when you talk to anybody today, or I don't know what Paul said, you just have to really be as dispassionate as possible for both your own ego and your work. You have to look at it like I invented milk or something, and I'm not going to let anyone else steal this from me. I'm not going to let this be marginalized. I'm not going to let this be, stolen or exploited in a way I'm not happy with. Yeah. You just have to sit there and go and have the strength to say no. And it might blow up in your face. Saying no is sometimes a bad thing. Maybe sometimes you don't get where you want to go. Yeah. And every situation is different. So I'm sure Paul probably said that. So it's hard to kind of know, should I say yes and take a chance, because sometimes that can work out for you, or should I say no because I know this is a bad deal, I need to run away from this, far away from it. Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah.
But I think being willing to at least, I love what you're saying, explore the no and sit with that, and not just go for that first thing if they're offering you the moon.
Yeah, absolutely. It does take a lot of strength. And of course, when you get to the point where you have something that's saleable, when you have something that looks like it's commercial and the people who want to make money are sniffing around you, you're going to get a whole bunch of opinions and counsel. And it can be absolutely mind-numbing to try to work through all of the comments and figure out a way to, what do I do? What's the right thing to do? It's difficult for anybody, and it's certainly difficult if you're like 17 or, now, the rock stars now are like teenagers. It's like, how do you figure that stuff out when you're so young?
That's right, no question. Yeah, and if you don't have a supportive group of people or family around you, that can be even worse, as we've seen with some of folks, right? So tell me a little bit about some other influences, whether musically, guitar-wise, or other musicians. You mentioned jazz guitar in your training. Who are those musicians that you've sort of just got at the top of the heap for you?
Well, not so much jazz. It's funny, when I read Guitar Player magazine back in the late 60s, early 70s, once again, having this kind of theatrical brain, I would read like the Howard Roberts columns and Jimmy Stewart columns, and they're talking about, modes and how to deal with harmony, and it sounded so intellectual, and I was really drawn to that. But when I actually bought some records, and this is a guy, it's going to sound like I'm putting this down, but I'm not, but here's a guy who came up with The Who and the Beatles and, David Bowie and all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm listening to this, it was kind of like I went, oh, I'm not going to play this. There's no way. So it took me a long time to kind of come back to that and realize the genius in a lot of that stuff. But, Mick Ronson's a big one for me. Yes. Paul Kossoff of Free is a big one for me. you get to some of the modern guys now. I kind of go for like the just absolutely ferocious players that, as trained as they might be, they just sound like they're, these savage beasts. And like, Reeves Gabrels is an amazing player. I just talked to Adrian Ballou a couple of minutes ago about his new record, and he's just insanely creative. I don't even know how he comes up with the things he comes up with. So I like to be surprised, and I like to have somebody grab me by the throat. So those kind of players are the ones that really kind of float my boat.